The truest expression of craft doesn't come from a recipe, a process, or even a perfect season for aging. No, it happens naturally, deep inside the barrel, untouched by human intervention. That's why at Blackwood Distilling Co., they don't rush perfection. Rather, they let time and nature take the lead. Their proprietary Blackwood toasting process isn't just about tradition. It's about unlocking layers of complexity that only emerge when you extend the maturation of a spirit. By carefully toasting their barrels, they coax out these rich, nuanced flavors like creme brulee, toasted pecans, warm baking spices, flavors that cannot be forced. Each sip reveals something new, something distinct, something that can only be achieved when craftsmanship meets patience. So raise a glass and taste what happens when we step back and let the barrel do the talking. Head over to blackwooddistillingco.com and discover the unhurried elegance of Blackwood Distilling.
Today on Film and Whiskey, we're going to be looking at the best whiskey you can get at every price point. And we're going to be sampling a new bourbon from our friends at Green River.
This is
the Film and Whiskey Podcast. Well, hey everybody, welcome into the Film and Whiskey Podcast. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we're coming at you with another special bonus episode. I am thoroughly enjoying these bonus episodes, Brad, because we have gamified things, and I love playing some games.
It's the best, man.
We had so much fun with last week's episode where we built our beginner whiskey shelf with $300 that we said, let's do something similar here.
my beginner shelf with a $105 bottle of Lagavulin 16.
Dude, if you want to impress somebody as a beginner, go get that Laggy 16, man.
That's the way to do it, man.
So today what we're doing, once again, inspired by our friends down at Green River Distillery, they have just come out with a new bourbon called Green River 1885, and we're going to review it here in just a second. But we were mostly inspired by the fact that this is a very inexpensive bottle of whiskey. Because of that, and because we are one of the only whiskey podcasts that I'm aware of that really considers the price point when we score out our whiskeys, I think we kind of have a corner on the market here, Brad, and I think that it's time that we really just say out loud what we've been implying all these years, which is what's the best...
better than everyone else?
Well, that too. I mean, I say that out loud all the time. But what's the best whiskey you could get at any price point? If someone says, I want a Scotch and I can't spend more than $50, here's our recommendation. And so I went ahead and looked at every whiskey score we've ever given, Brad. I pulled them all into a document. You and I are both looking at this document. We've broken it down by the type of whiskey and by general price ranges, and we're going to recommend whiskeys at each of these price ranges. This doesn't sound like a fun game, but for me, and hopefully for you, Brad, it sure is.
Yeah, there are more than enough whiskey drinkers out there that love a good spreadsheet who I just know are going to enjoy this episode.
Well, before we get into that, I say it's time we try this Green River. We teased it a little bit on last week's episode. So this is called Green River 1885 Bourbon Whiskey. We don't know too much about it other than the sell sheet that we found when we Googled it online. The side of the bottle, the copy says that it is a 4-year age-stated bourbon. It is only 85 proof, though. That's part of the 1885 appeal. We do know the mash bill on it is 76% corn, 15% rye, 9% malted barley. Perhaps most importantly, Brad, is the price on this bad boy.
Yeah, not only are you only going to spend $22 on this bottle of whiskey, Bob, this is not a 750 milliliter bottle of whiskey.
No,
you
it
know
is
how
not.
much comes in this bottle?
1 full liter, baby.
A whole liter of whiskey at $22.
Seriously, folks, this is among the most inexpensive bourbons you can get at this size. And I already inherently trust that it's going to be better than most of those whiskeys because it is from Green River. We've, Brad, their initial release, we were a little bit cooler on, but I feel like every single thing they've put out since then, we have not only liked, but have been effusive in our praise of.
Yeah, 100%. Green River continues to put out spectacular quality whiskey. Of all the distilleries we follow, I feel like they understand their price points better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Now, one more thing that I will say about this before we dive into the actual tasting is that I love a good piece of marketing. Brad, you know that I am a marketer in my day job, and the way that they are branding this here bottle of 85 proof bourbon is that it is blended and proofed for the bar. They're trying to put this behind the bar in every bar in America, and I think that this is a brilliant way to do it. You know, if you're going to release...
How'd you like their tagline, make mine an 85?
I love it, dude. If you're going to release a low proof whiskey, then lean into it and say, we have proofed this so that it can be used in cocktails all throughout America. We're going to put it in a big bottle so that bars don't have to buy a whole bunch of it. And then we're going to price it where bars are going to want to compete for it. Like, it's a brilliant marketing strategy. Green River, hats off to you.
Yeah, hats off to you with the marketing. Now, the most important question is, Bob, does the whiskey inside the bottle live up to the label on the outside?
Well, I have just poured it out, Brad. I'm going to be drinking this live. I know that you have already tried it, so why don't you go ahead and influence me by giving me your nosing notes on this?
The nose on this 1885 is a little bit slight, but you get all sorts of black pepper. There is some orange peel. Blech.
I believe we call them Oompa Loompas, Brad.
Oompa Loompas, yes. Oh, man. There is some orange peel, is the word I was looking for, and some hints of caramel, vanilla. It's not coming across incredibly strong, but there is a little bit of complexity here that I like, and I give it a 7 out of 10 here.
We used to have a black tea, like a box of black tea that was like orange spice. It had like a bunch of kind of fall spices to it with just a little bit of orange peel. I get that here. It's not quite like nosing an old fashioned in a glass because I don't get those Angostura bitters notes, but I get orange peel, I get cinnamon, I get nutmeg, I get clove, and kind of, I don't want to say overwhelming that, but on top of all of that is that black pepper. The rye really comes through on this one. I like it a lot, but it's like, it does remind me of like a black tea where you can kind of nose the sweetness, but you know that it might not taste super sweet. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it. Brad, what are your tasting notes here?
As I got into the palate, the caramel really came around for me. There's some flavors of like a golden delicious apple. The vanilla comes through. There's a little bit of a nutty pecan flavor going on. Not a vast plethora of depth, but once again, just really solid flavors that come across nicely in an 85 proof whiskey. I'm going to give it a 7.5 here.
Yeah. And again, I think this is where you got to keep the $22 price point in mind, because if this was a $50 bottle of whiskey, I do feel like I'd probably judge it a little bit more harshly than I am. The apple is super strong here. This is a perfect fall whiskey. I just get apple. I get orange. I get all those baking spices. I can imagine like mixing this with apple cider in the fall. It would just make a really, really good spiked apple cider. It does tip a little bit sour for me towards the back end. Kind of like what we get with some toasted bourbons sometimes. And, you know, it's not like overly sour. It's not super bitter. But I think that I'm going to be a little bit less harsh on it because it's a $22 bottle of whiskey because of that. Now, that said, Brad, the finish is great. It kind of keeps rolling back up my palate. I think it's really creamy on the finish. It drinks spicier than an 85 proof whiskey would. And I think that it would hold up really well in a lot of cocktails that they're going to be making behind the bar across America. Dude, I don't know, man. If we were going to score this out, it would certainly be getting a 10 out of 10 value for me.
100%.
I think on the nose, I'd give it about a 7. On the taste, I'd give it, I'd say a 7, 6.5 to a 7. Finish about the same. This is like a really solid whiskey across the board. And then it's absolutely bolstered by the fact that it's a 10 out of 10 value.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen lots of whiskeys like this get hit by the bubble that is the current whiskey world. And so you're going to pay $30 to $40 for a bottle like this. And Green River just kind of cut through all the BS and said, nope. This is a really solid whiskey at $22 that you can buy in a 1 liter bottle to use for your mixed drinks. And I absolutely love what they are doing here because the final product is incredibly delicious, especially considering the value that you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, if we were considering this as like a $7.50, we would be talking about a $15, $16 bottle of whiskey. So I think my score would probably come out somewhere in the 35 to 38 range on this. And that's like an immediate thumbs up. I would recommend trying this just on the merits of how good it tastes. But then when you get to the value on it, it's like, I don't know, Brad, this is probably one of the best values we've had in the last year, 2 years on the podcast.
Yeah, and I think that this whiskey kind of gives you a sense of why you add a little bit of water to your whiskeys. Because when you have a really well-made whiskey at 100 plus proof, adding a little bit of water can bring out some texture and flavors and help the whiskey. And if you gave somebody something like this Green River 85, I think you would start to understand that concept.
100%, man. All right, we are in a really good spot with this one, and I think it becomes a candidate for our next order of business here, which is picking the best whiskey at each price point. We'll get to that right after this break.
Hey there, whiskey lovers. You ever wonder what happens when you mix Kentucky Derby winners, legendary bourbon masterminds, and a dash of bold ambition? You get Blackwood Distilling Co., a premium brand born from the wild 65-1 odds victory of Country House in the 2019 Derby. They have crafted luxury toasted bourbon and America's first triple-barreled toasted rye that'll knock your socks off in the most delicious way possible. Picture this: 7 to 9-year-old Kentucky bourbon. Think deep, creamy vibes, soft barrel spices, and that smooth as velvet warmth, kissed by a hint of vanilla from Kentucky's golden era. And that's just the bourbon. If rye's more your thing, like it is for me, how about a 5 to 7-year-old Indiana rye triple-barreled in toasted barrels that blend spice, dark fruits, mint, and a dash of white pepper? It's basically a liquid holiday wrapped in oak and fire. Batches are continuously rolling out in states all across the union, so if you want in on luxury, head to blackwooddistillingco.com to get yourself some Blackwood toasted bourbon and toasted rye. Cheers to the good stuff.
All right, Brad, it's time for us to pick the best whiskey at each price point. Now, I will leave it to you here. We have this nice little fancy document broken down with color coding and everything else. We do have it broken down by type of whiskey. So where would you like to start? Bourbon is obviously the most dominant type of whiskey we've had on this podcast, so there's a lot to go through with bourbon. Would you rather knock out some of the ones that we've had fewer of, or just start right with bourbon?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go with our rye, our Irish, and international.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I think we should do Scotch and then bourbon.
Now, I put international as a category here, which is not really fair because obviously Scotch and Irish whiskey, and if we did Canadian, those would all be international too. But we've had some whiskeys like Japanese whiskeys, we've had Taiwanese whiskeys, Indian whiskeys, that there just aren't enough of them to form their own category. So perhaps unfairly, I said international as a category. That's what I mean there. Brad, why don't you go ahead and walk us through the price point ranges that we're going to be choosing from?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We're going to be looking at whiskeys in 5 categories, under $25. So, kind of your bottom level whiskeys that you'll be drinking day in and day out. $25 to $50, $50 to $80, $80 to $120. And then we're kind of getting into our luxury tier of $120 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can tell you right now, Bob, that is going to get really expensive when it comes to the scotches that I picked out.
Well, yeah, and I will say that the list that we're looking at here, Brad, I went back through all of our whiskeys that we've reviewed, and I just kind of arbitrarily said, I'll put the cutoff at 38 out of 50 on average. Now, I think that's going to unfairly impact like our under $25 category because a lot of times those whiskeys aren't great, but they're like far and away the best thing you can get for $15. And so I think when I look at this list, a lot of those whiskeys are missing, and it's going to really come down to us to kind of nominate some of these. But this gives us a nice baseline. So why don't we go ahead and start walking through, Brad? Do you want to start with rye or Irish or international?
Let's go ahead and start with rye. Might as well start at the top.
Now, I don't have any whiskeys categorized here for the under 25 category. And in fact, I think maybe the only one we've ever done that would fall into that category is Old Overholt. Not even the 100 proof Old Overholt, but the regular. And I think that you might be able to get the 100 proof for under 25. So it's just a question of, Brad, which one would you rather have on your shelf? The 80 proof or the 100 proof?
Probably the 100 proof. I think that would be my go-to. There's just a depth of flavor you can't quite get on 80 proofs.
Well, there you go. By virtue of being the only one that we could pick from, Old Overholt 100 is your under 25 rye representative. Now, in the $25 to $50 range, we've really only got two here. We've got the Old Overholt 114 proof, which our friend Chris Blattner raves about. And then we've also got your standard US1 Michter's single barrel rye. One of Brad's highest rated ryes of all time on this podcast. I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Yeah, the Michter's rye is far and away the obvious choice here at $45.
Do you have any other nominees in this area, or is this pretty much the one?
I would say it's Michter's rye. That's the only option at this price point that I think is worth your money.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through our next range, the $50 to $80 range, because once again, we don't have anything on our spreadsheet in that range. So it's going to take us kind of brainstorming here a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think here, I am reporting this based on friends and the internet. I'm going to say the Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye is probably your best value in this range. I think it's at like $65.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. The only one that I would put up that came from a bonus episode, so it doesn't have a full score from us, was this one we tried last year. We tried two ryes on one episode, and one of them was the Tumblin' Dice Rye, which is really good, but like $80 or $90. And then we tried one called Hunting Creek Rye, which became like one of our best loved whiskeys of that season. That's a $50 bottle. And I just tried it again a couple weeks ago. And I don't know if I could get a better rye for $50 than the Hunting Creek.
Yeah, I do remember that Hunting Creek. I just looked up the price. The Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye is $60. So I'm probably going to buy myself a bottle of that soon. That Hunting Creek Rye was stunning. So that's the winner in my book.
Awesome. All right. Well, that takes us to the $80 to $120 range, where we've got three nominees, and they are all Brad G. beloved favorites. One of them at $100+ depends on where you get this bottle, is your Midwinter Nights Dram. This is the tater bottle of all tater bottles. People seek this out every year. It ends up getting way marked up. So I almost hesitate to put it in here at 100 because it's so rare to find it at 100.
And it has to compete with Barrel Seagrass.
The other competition here, if we can put that in quotes, is Old Forester Single Barrel Rye, which we tried and really, really loved that one. But dude, I'm not even the world's biggest rye fan, and I have had to listen to you go on and on about Barrel Seagrass over the years. So I know where this is going. I don't think there's any competition here.
This is the easiest choice for any price point of any type of whiskey we're going to do today. $85, Barrel Seagrass. I would probably choose it above our luxury category whiskeys.
Yeah, where we only have two entries. They're both like at least $200, and depending on how much you want to spend, you can spend unlimited money on these. One is the Barrel Seagrass 16-year, which I believe is the gray label one. The other one is the Thomas H. Handy Sazerac Rye, which we've tried multiple variants of. I think the 2020 was the one that was our highest rated whiskey of all time.
Yes.
I think that would be my choice here. I like the Seagrass 16, but it is not better enough than the regular one for me to merit like spending the extra money. Like I'm happy if all I could ever get was the regular Seagrass forever.
Agreed. Yeah, 100% agreed. That Thomas H. Handy was like the heavens opening up.
Yeah.
And like, there is so much going on with the Sazerac Rye there. Absolutely incredible pour, and I think that's our luxury winner in the rye category.
All right, so from the bottom to the top here, in the budget category, we're picking Old Overholt 100. In the next tier up, we're going with US1, Michter's US1 Single Barrel Rye. In that $50 to $80 range, Hunting Creek Rye. In the 80 to 120, Barrel Seagrass. And then in our luxury category, Thomas H. Handy Sazerac Rye. That's a damn good shelf of rye right there, dude.
That is an incredible shelf of rye, Bob.
Let's knock Irish whiskey out here, Brad, because I've only got 3 entries on the spreadsheet, and they're all like under $50. We've had some upper level Irish whiskeys in the past. Specifically in season 1, we tried a bunch of Redbreast, and I don't think that we were ready to score high-end Irish whiskeys yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just recuse us from those. I think we should only kind of give what we reviewed and what we put confidence in our review for, with maybe a caveat of like, hey, we've tried more Irish whiskey outside the podcast. Maybe try this if you want to spend a lot of money. Is that fair?
Sure. I think that's 100% fair.
Well, in our under $25 range, I think there's really only one that I would recommend, and it's because it comes in right at the high end of that at $24.99 in the state of Ohio. It's the Sexton Single Malt Irish Whiskey.
Dude, this whiskey still lives on in my brain as one of the best whiskeys we've had, just because of the price point and the amount of flavor that you get in what I think is an 86 proof whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, dude, so much flavor, all sorts of depth and complexity that you get in Irish whiskeys. And I just think it's such a cool bottle to go on top of all that.
No, 100%. Okay, in the next category up, our 25 to 50, we've got 2 nominees. One is just your standard everyday Jameson, which we've tried multiple times now as a way of confirming that we weren't just noobs back in the day, which we were, but we were correct noobs. Jameson is a delicious whiskey, and despite being mass-produced, it is one of the higher quality mass-produced whiskeys you can get.
Yeah, and our other option is the Bushmills Red Bush, a whiskey that, if I'm being honest, Bob, I don't really remember drinking.
We did 3 Bushmills right in a row, and the standard white label Bushmills, not very good. Then we tried the Black Bush, and that was not very good. And then we tried the Red Bush, which I believe is finished in bourbon casks, and it is way spicier and so much more complex.
Yep.
And I have it on my shelf still. I really love that. And when I'm in the mood for an Irish whiskey that's has more pop to it, that's what I pull off.
Now, I will say in this category, slightly on the cheaper side, coming in at $29 for a 750, I would also personally recommend Tullamore Dew.
Oh, yeah. I believe you gave that a 40 out of 50 on average.
Yes. I was going to say, I remember drinking that and really, really liking it. Mm-hmm. Now, it's been a little while, but man, oh man, that's a great value at $29. But I think I am going to go with Jameson for just a few dollars more.
I'll pick Jameson as well. I think my personal choice would be the Red Bush, but I'm okay with Jameson. Now, again, we have had some Irish whiskeys on the way high end. Actually, back in March, we went to this event that was hosted by the Ohio Liquor Bureau, where we drank a bunch of really great Irish whiskeys. Waterford blew my mind.
Oh, dude.
Bua was really, really good.
Yep.
We've also had an Irish whiskey from a company called Athru, Athru, that they mailed them to us from Ireland. That was the coolest package of mail I've ever gotten. I don't know how it got through customs, but it got to my house somehow. And that was the best Irish whiskey I've ever had, but it was also $250 a bottle.
Yeah, there are incredible Irish whiskeys out there. We're not going to finish up the lineup for Irish because we just haven't had quite enough of it. But if you haven't gotten into Irish whiskey yet, you need to.
All right, Brad, let's knock out this one that I called international. Now, we've had probably 4 or 5 Japanese whiskeys on the show, and then intermingled with some other areas. One of them being Wales, where we had a flight of, I think, 4 different Penderyn whiskeys. The Penderyn Portwood is still one of our highest rated whiskeys of the last few seasons. I freaking love that thing. We've gone over to India and had a couple. The Amrut Fusion, one of our highest rated whiskeys ever. We had one from Taiwan called Kavalan, which was pretty good. I don't think it's in the league of those other 2. And then the best Japanese whiskey that we've had on the show so far was the Yamazaki 12, which is a higher end Japanese whiskey. Brad, I think that honestly, what we really have to decide here is between the Amrut Fusion and the Penderyn Portwood, what would get our pick in that 80 to 120 range, because they both come in around $90.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the Portwood, from what I remember, was similar enough to kind of that Irish Scotch experience, and the Amroot fusion was just spectacular. Yeah. And I don't know if I've ever tasted plum on a whiskey so clearly before. Nothing against Penderyn. Penderyn makes incredible whiskeys. I remember we loved all four of them. But I'm going to give the Amroot my vote of confidence here.
All right. So Amroot Fusion, and then I guess by default, Yamazaki 12 are our representatives from the international bracket, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, and I will say, literally just a few nights ago, I drank some Nika from the barrel.
Oh, dude. It's so good.
It's incredible, man. And it's coming in at $70. So it also would be in that 50 to 80 price point range. And oh my gosh, dude, it was spectacular.
Okay, let's jump down to Scotch. And Scotch is an interesting one because I don't have anything in the under $25 price point. And I think that's...
I have something for you, Bob.
Oh, do you really?
Cuddy Sark, baby.
Oh, Cuddy. Heck yeah, dude. Let's do Cuddy.
Come on, man.
Cuddy gets a bad rep. But for
it sure does.
$17, it's a damn good mixer.
It's an incredible mixer. And if you really just want to have some fun times on cheap Scotch, get yourself some Cuddy Sark.
There you go. Our sub $25 entrant is Cuddy Sark. In the $25 to $50 range, we've got some legitimate single malts and then some blended as well. We had one that I totally forgot we drank, Brad, called the Speyburn 10. This was a whiskey that I don't know how they sell it for so cheap. It's like a $30 single malt. Freaking blew our minds, dude. We were at like a 40 out of 50 on that one. We also really liked your standard Glenlivet 12, which I don't know how that got such a high score. It's good, but I don't think it's I thought Speyburn was better. This past season, we drank one called the Old Pulteney 12, which also got about a 40 out of 50 from us.
I remember being a huge fan of Old Pulteney 12.
And then we had the Nomad Outland whiskey, which was $30 and is one of the most sweet, decadent Scotch whiskeys I have ever had. I think I'd also throw Monkey Shoulder in here as well. I don't know. How do you want to proceed, Brad? I almost feel like we should give an award out for a single malt and for a blended.
Yeah, I think easily Monkey Shoulder is your blended winner here. I am actually going to go off script, Bob. I have had a single malt that comes in at $35 called Jura 10-year.
I've never had anything from Jura.
Oh, dude. Don't tell anybody. But Jura 10-year is incredible, and I don't want the price to go up. Dude, it would be my vote at this range. And nothing against Nomad. I still really like Nomad, but every time I drink it, I have to convince myself that it's good because I like it so much, but it's so weird in the world of Scotch.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's definitely an outlier in the world of Scotch. I think since I haven't had the Jura and I want to try to keep my picks to ones we've actually reviewed on the show, I think I'll go with the Speyburn 10 because I liked the other ones, but I don't know that I liked them enough to pay $12 to $15 more. And if you can get Speyburn for $30, that's a great, great deal.
Yeah, 100%, man. I'm with you there.
Okay, in our $50 to $80 price point, we've got quite a few nominees here, Brad.
Yes, we do.
Quite a few. I'll just read them from the bottom up. We've got Highland Park 12. We've got the Chivas Regal Mizunara finish, Ardbeg 10, Glenmorangie Nectar d'Or, Glenmorangie La Santa.
How'd you pronounce that, Bob?
Nectar Glenmorangie La Santa, Tamdu 10, Port Charlotte 10, Penderyn Madeira finish, Talisker 10, and Quinta Reuben 14. I think we know our winner here, Brad. It really sucks that this whiskey's almost $75 now, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love Quinta Reuben 14, but I love it at like $60, not at 70, I think $74 it is now.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to be honest with you. I think in this list, I think Talisker 10 might be my winner.
Yeah, me too. So again, I kind of want to do I think these are all single malts now, but I almost want to do like a non-peated and a peated.
Sure.
That Port Charlotte is like a freaking peat bomb. That's a little too much for me. Ardbeg 10 might be too, but I think Quinta Ruben is my favorite whiskey here. And I want to keep telling people to buy it, but they're starting to test my patience with the pricing on this thing. Talisker 10 has been $70 forever, so I'm used to seeing that. I think I'm with you. I think Talisker 10 is probably the representative here, Brad.
Yeah, 100%. There is a depth of flavor in the Talisker 10 that I loved, and you get everything that you want out of a really beautiful single malt Scotch at this price point.
Okay, in our, I don't want to call it luxury, but our special occasion category of 80 to 120, we're going to say, let's see, 5 of them came out of our spreadsheet here. We've got the Laphroaig 10 cask strength. We've got Laphroaig Lore, Lagavulin 16, Ardbeg Ugadal, and Glenmorangie 18. Now, the 18-year-old Glenmorangie, I think, is like really pushing the upper limits of that 120. It might even go over in some places. Regardless of that, my pick would not be that Glenmorangie 18. I have a feeling I know exactly what your pick is going to be, Brad.
I mean, this is the barrel seagrass of Scotch, Bob. Lagavulin 16 costs $105, and if you gave me $110 to spend on whiskey, I would buy this, and then I would try to bum a 10 ml sample off somebody else for $5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Lagavulin 16 is creamy and rich, and there are so many beautiful flavors going on here, and I can't encourage you enough. Go eat a beautiful salt and peppered steak with your Lagavulin 16, and it'll change your life.
I'm not picking Lagavulin 16 here because I think I just personally like the Ardbeg Ugadal better. This is I by far my highest rated ever peated Scotch. I think the Ugadal does such a great job of capturing what you get in Lagavulin, in Ardbeg, but then adding just that little bit of sweetness underneath that we don't typically get. It usually just tastes like medicinal and swampy. And like this one, I think couples that with a little bit of a nice kind of floral note as well. Honorable mention for me would be that Laphroaig Lore, which is like, it was our highest rated Laphroaig for a really long time. I think you could do a lot worse than any of these ones that we've picked so far. Now, again, on the high end of Scotch, Brad, we have a couple samples that were given to us by a friend who I will not name here of some Macallans that are apparently selling for $40,000 right now.
And I'm going to break into your house and steal those.
Well, I mean, I'm going to share them with you. I'm just saying, like, the world of Scotch is truly unlimited in terms of how much money you can spend. So I don't really have a recommendation on the high end. Do you?
I do, actually. Bourbon 18 is a really good pickup at, like, I think $180. The Macallan 15 comes in at about $180 as well. Another really exceptional, expensive bottle of whiskey. And finally, this is like I might buy a pour sometime. I spent $50 on a pour of this a while back, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Lagavulin 26.
Ooh.
Bob, this is a $2.4 thousand bottle of whiskey.
Oh my God.
That I will never buy. But man, oh man, that pour was special.
All right. So, starting from the bottom up, we're going to recommend Cuddy Sark, folks, at like $17 a bottle.
From Cuddy to Lagavulin 26, baby.
It's all the same, you know? And the next tier up, we're going with Monkey Shoulder, followed by Speyburn 10 at $30-ish. We've got the Talisker 10 representing the next tier up at roughly $70. And then if you want to get a little bit crazy, you want to break triple digits, you can either get the Lagavulin 16, Brad's pick, or the Ardbeg Ugadal, my pick. And finally, if you are just rolling in it, You can either do the Oban 18 or the Lagavulin 26. Brad, this just leaves one category for us, and it is a doozy. And we're talking about the world of bourbon.
Kind of a small category.
Just a slight category here. One of the things I do love about bourbon, and it's because of our access to it, we're in the native country of bourbon, is that despite inflation, you can still get really good bourbon for under $20 if you know where to look.
Yeah, there are all sorts of really great cheap whiskeys out there that don't fall into the trap of, poor man's swill. We reviewed one of them earlier today, Bob. That Green River 1885 easily jumps into the highest end value category that we've ever had. But it was so impressive, Bob, that I actually almost had a little bit of a cage match. I brought out my bottle of Rebel 100 that I actually rarely drink from because I had to know. I had to check to see, can this 1885 stand up to Rebel 100? And at the end of the day, Bob, Rebel 100 is like a 15 out of 10 on value.
It's so good, dude.
It's mind-boggling how easy of a pick this is for me.
The crazy thing is, listeners of our show now know how much we've hyped it, and we've had some people say, I went out and bought a bottle because you guys hyped it up so much, and they're like, it's pretty good. It's like, yeah, dude, it's $20. Like, I didn't tell you it was the best bourbon I've ever had, but you could easily sell that bottle of whiskey for $30, and I still wouldn't bat an eye at it. And the fact that they're selling it at $20 is kind of, like you said, it's mind-boggling. The only other one that I would put in contention here, aside from the Green River that we had today, and I actually miscategorized this one as being $25. It's $22 in the state of Ohio. Benchmark Full Proof.
Yeah.
It's 125 proof whiskey for $22.
Yeah, that's really hard to pass up on, man.
Let's walk through this next category, Brad. This is our $25 to $50 range. Starting from the lowest end, we've got Ezra Brooks 99, Bullet Bourbon, Cooper's Craft 100 proof, Early Times Bottled and Bond, Jack Daniel's Triple Mash, 1792 Full Proof, Johnny Drum, Rebel Distillers Collection, and New Riff Bottled and Bond Bourbon. This is a tough matchup. There's like 4 or 5 here that I could easily pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's just get like 3 on the docket and talk about those 3. I personally am going to recommend Cooper's Craft 100. I think it's called Distiller's Blend. I'm going to put that one up, Bob. What about for you?
Let's see. Can I just throw a couple names out here and you tell me yes or no on these?
Sure.
I think that Jack Daniel's Triple Mash deserves to be in the conversation.
Yes.
I think Rebel Distillers Collection deserves to be in the conversation.
Yes.
I would say New Riff Bottled and Bond, but I also might recommend 1792 Full Proof. We haven't really had anything barrel proof yet, or close to it,
Yeah, I think I would lean towards the 1792 over the New Riff. But man, this is a stacked category. And honestly, of all the whiskeys we've done so far, I almost feel like you need like a subcategory of 30 to 40 and 40 to 50.
I think that's fair. Let's do that. Okay, so sub $40. We're talking about Cooper's Craft 100. We're talking about Jack Daniel's Triple Mash, which I categorize as bourbon. I know it's Tennessee whiskey.
Which is bourbon.
I think, okay, let's do that. I would say, I think the Triple Mash is the better whiskey, but I would pick the Cooper's Craft here, honestly.
Yeah,
I just think it's slept on.
I think 100% people sleep on the Cooper's Craft. It's got great labeling. It's a good-looking bottle on your shelf, and it makes some of the absolute best cocktails you will ever have if you're willing to spend, $35 on a mixer.
Okay, so between Rebel Distillers Collection and 1792 Full Proof, I obviously know my choice. What would your choice be?
Yeah, I think my choice is pretty obvious too. The Rebel's Distiller Collection takes everything you get with Rebel 100 and shows you why that is so good when you give it a higher quality edition.
Yeah, for sure. All right, in the $50 to $80 range, we're looking at Green River Foolproof, which is immediately a contender. Rebel Cask Strength. Rebel, seriously, start paying us money. We have given you so much publicity. Oh my gosh.
100%, man.
Old Forester 1910. You've got Woodford Double Oaked, Wild Turkey Rare Breed, Maker's Mark Cask Strength, Rabbit Hole Cave Hill, Old Forester 1920, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, Weller Antique, and Joseph Magnus. Holy crap, dude.
Dude, we've drank some really good whiskey.
We sure have. All right, once again, let's do the same thing. Let's go like 50 to, I don't know, 50 to 60 and then 60 and above.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if we're doing 50 to 60, oh man, how are you gonna? This might be the hardest category, Bob, because
you want my hot take?
Foolproof.
My hot take is I would take every single one of these over the $60 to $80 ones.
Oh.
I don't think there's one in there. The $60 to $80 ones are Rabbit Hole Cave Hill, Old Forester 1920, Russell's Reserve, and Weller Antique, and Joseph Magnus. I would take literally any one of these underneath it, above that.
The Weller Antique 107 is the only one that would come close for me. But I think I'm with you. Honestly, I think if I had to pick two from this category, it would probably be the Green River Foolproof and the Woodford Double Oaked. And that's including the $60 and $70 stuff.
I would for sure cut out the Rebel Cask Strength. I just think the Distiller's Collection is better.
Agreed.
Maker's Mark Cask Strength blew us away.
Oh, so good. Bob, I think that's actually $45.
Is it really?
I believe it's $45 in the state of Ohio, yeah.
All right, well then we're just going to eliminate it here, and I'm going to say sorry that we didn't get to you earlier, but that makes our decision easier. I would probably nominate Rare Breed, Woodford Double Oaked, and Green River Foolproof. Those would be my three.
Oh, man. If I had to pick one of those three, because I'm with you, I think the Old Forester 1910 is worthy of another mention. One of the best bourbons at that price point. I think that I'm just going to stay loyal to my journey as a whiskey connoisseur. And Woodford Double Oaked was the first whiskey I ever had that made me step back and go, oh,
yeah,
that's what whiskey can be?
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to stick with Woodford Double Oaked here.
I think I am too. And part of it is because I love Rare Breed and I love the Foolproof from Green River so much. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one of those I would, if you made me choose one forever, I don't know that I could make that choice. Whereas Double Oaked is kind of like in a category of its own. So
yeah,
I'm going to put Double Oaked on here. And that takes us to our 80 to 120 range, where we've only got a few contenders from our spreadsheet. We've got the Pursuit United bourbon from our friends at Bourbon Pursuit. Barrel Vantage, I think our highest ranked whiskey of season 8.
Mm-hmm.
John J. Bowman Single Barrel, a whiskey that apparently dominated that I don't even remember drinking. Rebel 10 Single Barrel, and Booker's. Booker's is kind of the gimmicky choice here, I would say, Brad. Like, if you want a nice box, you can get Booker's.
Yeah. I'll go ahead, and I know that nobody can get this anymore, but I will just honorable mention the Pfeiffer Pavitt Reserve that we had ages ago, and I think that was a 120. So it's, it's kind of on the edge of this category, but Bardstown Bourbon Company is always going to put out good whiskey.
I'm going to say my honorable mention would be the Pursuit United, but I'm going to go with Barrel Vantage here.
Dude, we're in lockstep here, man. That Barrel Vantage is so good. Barrel continues to be the greatest blender of whiskeys of any company we've ever encountered.
Okay, that takes us to our ultra premium category, where we've got the Bardstown Amrut collaborative series at $160. We've got the Old Forester 150th anniversary. Now, as I recall, when we had former blender Jackie Zykan on the show, there were 3 blends that they came out with as the 150. And I think we had blend number 1. and it knocked our freaking socks off.
Yeah.
That whiskey has got to cost like $1,000 now because it only came out once. And then finally, we had Blanton's straight from the barrel. The barrel that we had was bottled, I believe, in 2002. It was sent to us by our Instagram friends, Bourbon and Stuff. It was, no joke, the best bourbon I've ever had in my life. It's hard for me to say that any other Blanton straight from the barrel will taste like that. But like for me, even on the off chance that it might echo that, I think my pick would be the straight from the barrel.
Now, I will say, we have also had Pappy Van Winkle 15 year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that just didn't quite reach this level.
We were underwhelmed, Brad.
Okay.
Based on I think it was based on the price, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we have also, off the record, off the Foam and Whiskey record, had the likes of Eagle Rare 17.
Mm-hmm.
And I was personally blown away with that. I think if I had to pick from these three, I would probably... Oh man, that Old Forester 150 was good.
Yeah, it was really good.
I'm with you, man. I'll go with the Blanton straight from the barrel. That one was so stunningly good.
We've had, I think, 4 different kinds of Blantons on the show, and I think only 2 of them are even worth the price. And it was the Blanton's Gold Label and the Blanton straight from the barrel. And I think that if you're ever going to try to tell people to go buy Blantons, you gotta have, like, it has to be the straight from the barrel. It's the only one that I think is worth springing for in terms of the money you're going to invest. Brad, it's also worth noting that our presenting sponsor today, Blackwood Distilling, all of their bottles kind of fall into this $120 to $160 price range. And I gotta say, man, like, that toasted rye that we have had from them, that's obviously not bourbon here that we're talking about, but that toasted barrel rye is freaking phenomenal. It's not available nationwide yet, but if you can find a pour of it anywhere, I highly recommend trying a pour of that at the bar.
Yes, man, we talked about how a lot of bonus episode whiskeys didn't make it in here because we don't quite have it on our spreadsheets the same way as all of our regular episodes. I feel ashamed, Bob. That Blackwood rye is so good.
It's really good,
I mean, the amount of the depth of flavor, the richness that you get reminds me of like a barrel seagrass, where you get the best of both worlds of a bourbon and a rye.
Mm-hmm. And so we have our list of bourbons now, Brad. In the sub 25 category, Rebel 100. In the 25 to 50, you can take your pick between Rebel Distillers Collection, my favorite whiskey, and Cooper's Craft 100. In the $50 to $80 range, Woodford Double Oaked. 80 to 120, we picked Barrel Vantage, and in the above 120, Blanton's straight from the barrel. I want to drink all of these whiskeys right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has given me cravings to like go back and drink all of these over again.
Yeah. Well, folks, there are our picks for every whiskey you can get at every price point, but we want to know what your personal favorites are. Is there something we completely whiffed on or just forgot about? You can let us know on all of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or jump onto the Discord. We are on there every single day talking to you guys, fans of the Film and Whiskey podcast. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find a link to our Discord server at the end of every single one of our show notes.
We want to say thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Blackwood Distilling Company. Check out their website, blackwooddistillingco.com. Grab yourself a bottle today. We'll be back next week with another special bonus episode. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.